it be? But me, you're me, Louie T. Welcome to my continued coverage of the 2019 NFL Scouting Combine. Day number 4, the final day of the Scouting Combine, which means it's time for the defensive backs. Boy, was this an absolute train wreck, especially for the corners. The safeties actually were quite impressive, to say the least. But in this league that we've seen morph into a passing league, I mean, the lines are somewhat blurred between strong and free safety, and even at times cornerback and safety. I mean, a lot of these guys that play safety are asked to have corner responsibilities, drop down over the slot, play some nickel, those types of things. So you have to be really flexible in this league because of all of the different changes to the game and how the league is set up for offenses to succeed, in the advent of the athletic tight end that you flex out. So it's become more imperative that you get athletically gifted safeties, and we saw some athletically gifted safeties in day number 4. As for the cornerbacks, they were absolutely ass-tastic in day number 4, and that might have been the worst performance I've seen from a single group in my history of watching the Combine. You know what? I shouldn't say that, because there was one year where the corners were absolutely slow, and I remember Dion saying, man, these guys are slow, and that was a pretty bad group too. It seems like when we get a huge disappointment at the Combine, it's generally with these corners, and boy, these guys, they ran fast. For the most part, they were some fast corners, but boy, were their agility, their listening skills, just not on full display here. And so, look, the tape speaks for itself. You know, you're not going to walk away from the Combine that down on a guy because of their performance at the Combine. Now, again, if you're on the fence about a guy and they come to the Combine and you're looking for reassurance, or you're looking for a guy to sell you on why you should believe in him and his skill set, this was not a good performance for the cornerbacks. I can assure you of that. But if you already like a guy and they come to the Combine and they don't test as well, or in this case, they just don't have great on-field drills, you're willing to overlook some of those things if the tape is good enough. So it is what it is. Let's get to day number 4 and wrap the Combine as a whole up. And so we go to group number 10, the cornerbacks. And like I said, I don't have a lot of nice things to say about this group. I already went into this process not really having a good feel for what the cornerbacks were. I haven't done any film study on these cornerbacks, so I can't sit here and talk to you about these guys intimately. I can only talk to you about the ones that I've seen watching games, either studying some of these offensive players and just running into some of them, or just watching games in general when they first came on the air live and seeing these guys and having a first impression of them. But in terms of film study, I haven't watched any of these guys, so can't really give you a lot to chew on. And so that's why this is that much, it's that worse, much worse for me, because I haven't been exposed to these guys, a lot of them. This is my first exposure to them, so you can never get a second chance to make a first impression. And for a lot of these guys, it was an awful first impression. And again, I'm going to try not to be jaded, and I'm going to try not to be affected when I go watching the tape. But some of these guys looked awful in day number 4. DeAndre Baker was supposed to be one of the best corners along with Greedy Williams in this draft. And look, he very well still may be. But again, 4.53 at 5'11", 193 doesn't knock my socks off. Again, you don't have to run 4.4 to be an effective corner in this league. We saw Dick Sherman run the NFL for about a 3-year stretch. Darrelle Revis wasn't a legit 4.4 guy. I don't care what anybody says. Darrelle Revis was a legit 4.5 guy, and Darrelle had his own island. So you don't have to be a legit 4.4 guy to run the league or to have success in this league. It helps if you can run with all the speedsters in this league, but you can be an effect. Josh Norman has never a day in his life been a 4.4 corner, and he had a good run in the league himself. So again, you don't have to be the most electrifying speed guy to be effective. But again, I thought DeAndre Baker was going to test better than he did. And really, that was a question for all of these guys. DeAndre Baker, Chris Boyd for me was another guy I wanted to see how fast he ran out of Texas. Julian Love, remember I told you this yesterday, and I talked about this on the podcast. I wanted to see how fast Julian Love ran. I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. I told you he didn't seem like he was that fast to me. And another thing about Julian Love, he can get he can become very grabby down the field. A really touchy-feely guy. So there are a lot of questions about Julian. I told you, I don't go shopping at the Notre Dame store for defensive backs unless you're talking safety. I generally try to stay away from the cornerbacks at Notre Dame. They don't get the best crop of athletes in the secondary, so I generally try to stay away from them. You want to go shopping at the Notre Dame store in the front seven, knock yourself out. Generally, I say, look, you want a tight end, you want an offensive lineman, by all means, shop at the Notre Dame store. Anything else, you are on your own. Good luck. You're going to need it. So with that being said, DeAndre Baker, 4'5'3", wasn't 5'11", 193, wasn't impressed with his movement skills throughout the day. I didn't think he was all that impressive. I just didn't. I didn't walk away from this feeling any other way about DeAndre Baker. Now, I've seen good tape on him just watching other guys, Hollywood Brown, for instance, in that Georgia Rose Bowl. So I've seen him have some good tape, but again, not impressed with him at the combine. I just wasn't. Corey Ballantyne out of Washburn, 5'11", 196, ran a 4.47. Again, really good 40 time. Didn't have great on the field drills though for Corey Ballantyne. But again, at that speed, you're going to turn on the tape and see what this guy brings to the table. And obviously, he has to be a hell of a football player, getting invited to the combine from Washburn. So definitely going to have to check. In a crop of corners that isn't that strong, maybe you find a gem like Corey Ballantyne in this draft. Chris Boyd is a guy that I like out of Texas, 5'11", 201. 4.45 540, so he checked that box for me because I wasn't sure. He's a physical corner. When you watch him, he can be a little handsy at times, but he's very physical, gets in the face of wide receivers, not afraid to come up and make tackles. So it was good to see him run fast because I wasn't sure that he was going to do that. And so he did check that box for me. Sean Bunting out of Central Michigan had one of the better performances on the field. In terms of the 40 at 6 feet 195, he made the statement that he was going to rip the combine up. He ran a 4.42, so that was a great time, especially for his size at 6 feet, almost 200 pounds. But on the field drills, he looked choppy. Sometimes he looked like he was out of sorts. A guy that looked like he was fighting the football when he was catching it at times. So one of those guys that had to absolutely put on the brakes to catch the football, which tells me you're not comfortable catching the ball. Again, wasn't impressed all that much with Sean Bunting, but he did run a fast 40. One of the guys that I was impressed with throughout the day, and at this size, when you see guys like DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown coming down the pipeline, it's always good to see guys with length, size, and speed in one package, and that is the case with Isaiah Johnson out of Houston. 6'2", 208 pounds, ran a 4.4 flat, so he was flying at 6'2", long, rangy corner. Looks the part of a guy that has all the tools necessary to be effective at the next level. But just because you're tall and long and have speed doesn't mean you're going to be effective at the next level. So hopefully he can put it all together. He's an ex-wide receiver, so he's still kind of learning the position. We'll see if he continues to make the transition cleanly from wide receiver to cornerback. But he gave himself a great start going into the league with this combine performance at 6'2", 208, running a 4.4 flat. And I actually thought his on-the-field movements didn't look all that bad throughout the day as well. One of the few cornerbacks I walked away saying, I was actually somewhat impressed. Lonnie Johnson out of Kentucky, another long, rangy corner, 6'2", 213. He's well put together, ran a 4.52. That's a great time for a guy that size. Again, to put it into perspective, you look at Isaiah Johnson, similar size and weight, running a 4.4 flat. That's a phenomenal time, and then you put that side by side to Lonnie Johnson and his 4.52, and that's a good time for a guy that size. So I thought Lonnie Johnson running a 4.52. You watch him at Kentucky; he's a big physical corner, and he looks the part, and he plays the way that he looks. Again, not the best on the field drills for Lonnie Johnson, but I didn't think he was that bad during the on the field movement drills. But nonetheless, 4.52 for a guy 6'2", that's something that will definitely help him moving forward. Justin Lane out of Michigan State, 6'1", 192 pounds, ran a 4.51. Another guy with some length. And they kept using the term, or Daniel Jeremiah, I should say, kept using the term smooth and patient with Justin Lane. I don't know anything about Justin Lane. I'm going to have to watch film on him. He's going to be drafted at 6'1", 192, running a 4.51. And so I'm going to have to do a little bit of homework on him, because when I hear patient and smooth, those are usually good terms for a corner. And with that length and size, does bode well for a guy like Justin Lane. Julian Love, anxious to see what he did. 5'11", $195, 4.5, 4.40. Not bad. Okay, I knew he wasn't going to run. I didn't expect him. I won't say I knew. I didn't expect him to run a sub 4.5. And so that's right around where I thought he was in terms of speed. But what I was disappointed in him was the on the field drills. I just thought he would be a little bit more fluid and smooth, out of breaks, in and out of transitions. He looked to be thinking too much instead of just going out and doing what comes natural to him. You could tell guys were thinking a lot. And some of these guys, I think they're much better than what we saw today. I think they were just nervous. They were tense. And they were thinking too much. Guys looking at the cone like, come on, you know the cone's there. You don't have to stare at the cone the entire time you're backpedaling and then stick your foot in the ground. Like they were thinking too much, and Julian Love was one of those guys thinking entirely too much. Just go out and let your athleticism take over. Just thought it was a rough day for him as well. Trayvon Mullen was a guy I was looking forward to out of Clemson, 6'1", $199. I was hoping that he would go out and show something and really help himself. He ran fast at 4.46, and like I said, most of these guys ran well, so that wasn't the issue with these corners. But he was a guy that he was all out of sorts. Him and Greedy Williams just seemed not to follow instructions well, had to do drills over several times. It was a rough go of it for Trayvon Mullen. But again, guy's very talented, went to Clemson, has some size at 6'1", almost 200 pounds, ran a sub 4.5 40 at 4.46. A lot of tools to work with there. So we'll see what happens for Trayvon Mullen. Byron Murphy was another guy that was highlighted with this group. And when you're talking corners in this draft, some of the names that you're going to hear repeatedly are going to be Greedy Williams, going to be Byron Murphy, going to be DeAndre Baker, going to be Rock Ya-Sin, going to be Julian Love. These are the names that you're going to hear often over and over again. Murphy was a guy that I wanted to see what he was going to weigh, number one, because when you watch him on tape, he looks really diminutive. I mean, really, really small. And so to hear him put on 14 pounds specifically for the purpose of the combine, I don't know how I feel about that. Are you going to keep that weight on, and is that going to be your new playing weight? We'll see if I hear that at his Washington Pro Day that he's back down to a $180 and he played around a $176. If he's at a $180, then I don't know how to feel about him being 190 pounds at the combine. But to run a 4.55 with 14 newly added pounds since the end of his season, that's, you know what that says to me is he's probably more of a 4.47 guy, 4.48, 4.49 guy. 4.5 flat, somewhere in there. But in any event, he wasn't terrible in the drills, but I just expected more. And that's the bottom line, is I expected more from a smaller corner. I expected more agility, better movement skills than what I got. He wasn't awful. He just wasn't as good as I thought in terms of his movement skills. And again, he could have been another one of these guys just thinking a little bit too much. A guy that I was intrigued by coming into this process because of his length and size was Amani Oruwariye out of Penn State. And AO was a guy I looked at 6'2", 205. How fast were you? That was my question for him. He checked that box at 4.48. So you add in another guy along with Lonnie Johnson and Isaiah Johnson and some of these other guys like Justin Lane, to another guy with size and length that ran well at the combine. So that bodes well for, and again, another Penn Stater that tests well. Go figure. This is what we've come to expect from these guys. But again, another guy that struggled with some of the on-the-field movement in the drills. Greedy Williams had an awful day. At 6'2", $185, he did run fast. All right, 4.37, which we expected. We expected him to time well, but man, he had a tough time following directions. He had a tough time with movement skills. On one of the one of the back pedal and turn drills. He damn near fell. You're supposed to stay on the line straight. He was off of the line by a full 2 yards. And you know, it prompted Deion to have the whole conversation about them having flat feet and things of that nature. It was just a rough day. And look, I don't know if Greedy actually had a cramp or not. I would have shut it down too, because the day was awful. It was a rough go of it for Greedy Williams. And he probably just said to himself, you know what? This shit isn't going the way that I expected. It's been a rough day all the way around. I'm going to just wait to my pro day and light it up there. This shit is, I'm done. I'm done. I don't blame him. He was awful today. And there wasn't anything he could do to change the mind of anybody. He was awful today. And if you came into the combine on the fence on Greedy Williams, you hopped over that fence and said, I'm not coming back. If you were a Greedy Williams fan, I can tell you what, he bit off way more than he could chew today at the combine. He bit off way more than he could chew, and I was not impressed with him at all whatsoever. And a lot of the things that Daniel Jeremiah talked about that I've seen with him throughout watching him at LSU, guys beating him on in-breaking routes, i.e. the slant, him having problems with that. You saw it in his movement skills. And so that's something that he's going to have to answer to. You know, whether he goes and lights his pro day up or not, he's got some questions to answer, and he didn't help himself at the combine. I can assure you of that. If he thought he was going to be the first cornerback off the board, this didn't help him. He may ultimately still be the first cornerback off the board. I'm just saying right now with what I saw, if I were on the fence, I'd lean towards DeAndre Baker before Greedy Williams after seeing what I saw today. But again, if you're looking for today's NFL corner, Greedy Williams fits that a little bit more so, that profile more so than DeAndre Baker does. Juwan Williams, hey, look, man, you're looking for size, 6'4", 211. You're not going to get much bigger than that in today's NFL. He ran a 4.65. At 6'4", 211, a 4.65 is fine by me, okay? He may get moved to safety, who's to say, but that's a hell of a size for a corner, indeed. I got to watch film on him. I have no idea, you know, what Juwan Williams brings to the table out of Vandy. I haven't watched a lot of Vandy tape, so I got some work to do there because I'm anxious to see what a 6'4", 211-pound corner looks like on the football field. And so I'm anxious to check out Juwan Williams, just if for no other reason, just to see what his skills are on the football field with pads and helmet on. Rock Ya-Sin, it was a guy that a lot of people have been hyping up out of Temple, 6 feet, $192, ran a 4.52. He didn't have actually that bad of a day, if you want to be honest. Rock Ya-Sin wasn't terrible. You know, I went into this combine looking for someone to separate themselves. I told you I thought he had a strong Senior Bowl, and I actually thought he did some good things in the game itself. And so I was looking for that to carry over into the combine, and it just didn't. And so that's why I was a little disappointed in Rock Ya-Sin, because I was looking for someone to separate, and if DeAndre Baker didn't want to step up to the plate and separate, if Greedy Williams didn't want to step up to the plate and separate, if Julian Love didn't want to announce himself on this platform, if Byron Murphy didn't want to say, hey, look at me, I'm a first-round corner, I deserve to be one of the highest-rated corners in this draft, if he didn't want to do that, then I thought Rock Ya-Sin could ascend in this draft and at the combine and really do something to help his stock. And I didn't really get that sense watching him in day number 4 either. So then you have a bunch of guys that I thought really helped themselves, if for no other reason, if you didn't know who they were, or if you really haven't watched enough tape on them, here it is. I ran fast. Now you got to go and do some work on me. David Long out of Michigan, not going to lie, watched a ton of Michigan games, have no clue who this guy was. So I got work to do. If you go to Michigan, you run fast, he looked good. I should have added him to the list of guys that actually didn't do a poor job, because David Long actually had a really good day. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna do one better, and I'm actually gonna add him to the list of guys that actually don't deserve to be chastised at the cornerback position, because he actually didn't have a bad day at all. So let's add him to the list right now. And so I just did, because David Long out of Michigan, he was the one that Deion praised in the back pedal and turn drill. You watched him in the W drill I thought he had some good movement skills there, even though he T-stepped, and they talk about not stopping your feet. And that's a cardinal sin for a cornerback. Don't stop your feet. If you stop your feet, generally that's how you get beat as a cornerback. But I thought he did some really good things, caught the football well. So I'm adding him to the list of guys that I was impressed with in day number 4 at the cornerback position. Jamel Dean out of Auburn, never heard of him, had 6'1", 206, ran a 4.3 flat. I mean, dude was flying. Looks a little awkward. Has come back from 3 major knee injuries in a 4-year span. So there's a lot of work to do on him. But he ran fast as hell. And if you didn't have a grade on him, if you haven't done any film study, that forces you to go back and watch. So there that is. And Mark Fields was a guy that I was really impressed with out of Clemson. And again, he didn't start at Clemson. He started 6 whopping games at Clemson in his career. But when it's that deep, which it was at Clemson, and you know they got so much talent, if you don't stand out in any way, almost like Tony Brown last year with Alabama, where you're looking at him like, bruh, you know, why didn't you start more? You got all this talent. Where have you been? But he got drafted. You know, when you've got that kind of talent and you run that fast, somebody's going to draft you. And Mark Fields helped himself immensely at 5'10", $192, running a 4.37 40. So I'm intrigued with that kind of speed. And like I said, had good movement skills throughout the day. So no Kendall Sheffield, the Ohio State corner. He injured his pec benching yesterday, so he was not able to perform at the combine. And wow, what a lousy day for the cornerbacks. As we move on to the final group of the 2019 NFL Scouting Combine, the safeties, they actually had a absolutely fabulous day. If the cornerbacks were ass-tastic, the safeties were fantastic. And so you start with Jonathan Abram of Mississippi State. I told you yesterday he was a guy to watch, 5'11", 205. He did not disappoint, running a 4.45 40. No Nazir Adderley out of Delaware. He did not perform at the combine, had a little bit of an injury, so you have to wait till his Delaware Pro Day. He's got a chance to really catapult himself in this draft. He's already a first-round safety, back end of the first round. He's got a chance to catapult himself into the mid-portion of the first round with a really strong pro day. Lucas Dennis out of BC, 5'11", $190. I really thought he would test a little bit better than what he did, 4.65 40. Thought he would run a little bit faster than that. And that's not a slow time. The NFL has evolved, and we've gotten spoiled to the point where 4.65 for a safety isn't fast. But that used to be plenty fast. But now you look at a 4.65 and you're like, ugh. And so I feel like I'm really discounting Lucas Dennis because he's actually a talented football player. But that 4.65 sticks out like a sore thumb. Nonetheless, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson out of Florida had an exceptional day. 5'11", 210. I didn't expect him to run a sub 4.5. I thought he would run like a 4.52, 4.55. And I know 4.52, 4.49, there's not that big of a difference. You're talking about 0.03 of a second. But that's still a lot, man. It looks a lot different when that second number is a 4 instead of a 5. He was running, man. He was moving. And he's a very versatile safety, and that bodes well for him going to the next level, running a 4.49. And I thought he moved well throughout the day. A guy that I really was disappointed in was Jaquan Johnson out of Miami. Thought he looked good at the Senior Bowl, and I thought that would carry over. Thought he was going to run much better than damn near a 4.7. He ran a 4.69. That is just grotesque there for a guy that is actually a talented free safety that has a little bit of range, but that 4.69 doesn't speak to him having the kind of range that you see when you watch him on tape. But nonetheless, at 5'10", a $191, 4.69 is what it is. Well, he'll look to clean that up at his pro day, and hopefully he will. His teammate, though, went out and made a statement. Sheldrick Redwine made a huge statement, 6 feet, $196. He started out the day with a 10-10 broad and a 39-inch vert. And you know, with that kind of explosiveness, it's going to translate over to the 40. That it did. He ran a 4.46. he had a really good day. So, again, I thought he really, really helped himself with his performance at the Combine. A guy that I was really impressed with. I actually got my first real look at him about 3 days ago watching a game with Ohio State. And I was looking at Dwayne Haskins against Maryland. And I watched, that's when I first ran into Darnell Savage Jr. Made a hell of a play in that game. Haskins staring down his receiver. He reads the eyes of Haskins, takes him straight to the ball. He deflects it into the air. It's picked off, and it's a house call. And that was all Darnell Savage. And if you see the closing speed on that particular play to deflect the ball in the air, it's one of those eye-popping wow moments. And he had himself a ball game versus Ohio State, and that was impressive. And so I knew the guy had some quickness. Now my question was, is that speed or is it just quickness? He more than answered that question, running a 4.37 at 5'11", $198. He made himself some money at the Combine, and I can tell you this much. I'm very intrigued by Darnell Savage Jr. Juan Thornhill is a guy that I talked to you about yesterday, telling you that he was another one of these safeties. Talked about him on the podcast as well, out of Virginia, close to home. So I know about Juan Thornhill. I expected him to test well. I didn't expect him to test that well at 6 feet 205. I knew he was going to run fast. I didn't think he was going to run 4.43 fast. I knew he was going to jump high. I didn't know he was going to jump 44 inches high. I knew he was going to jump far. I didn't know he was going to jump 11.9 far. He tested off the charts, and his play backs it up. He made himself some money as well during the course of this Combine. Cedric Woods had the fastest time of anyone at any position at the 2019 NFL Scouting Combine. He ran a 4.29, 5'11", 205. This is when you know that you're not that good of a football player. And look, everybody that gets invited to the Combine in some capacity has talent, all right? But if you run that fast, normally they've got some kind of story to tell, or they're talking you up as a player. They said nothing about Cedric Woods. Nothing. He ran fast, and they was like, whoa, that's fast, and that was it. There wasn't oh, man, you saw him in the Mississippi State game flash, or you saw him make a heck of a play against Toledo. You didn't hear any of that, all right? They didn't say anything, so that tells me that he's probably a bum. But he ran fast, so that's going to make people have to go back and check him out. But they might not like what they find. So I didn't walk away saying, man, got to watch Cedric Woods now. I just said, 4.29, not bad. That's actually really goddamn fast. But I didn't walk away because they didn't make me feel like I should go back and watch this guy. So no Taylor Rapp. Was looking forward to seeing actually how fast he would be. He didn't run the 40. He did do the on-the-field drills, though, but he didn't run the 40. That was a little disappointing, but whatever. Marvell Tell, the second out of USC, 6'2", $198. He jumps an 11.4. He jumps a 42-inch vert. I'm thinking he's going to blaze the 40, and he doesn't run it. So I don't know what the situation was there, but he decided to just do the on-the-field drills and some of the other testing, but didn't do the 40. So that sucked. And then no Deontay Thompson, as I told you on the podcast. Wrist surgery kept him out of the Combine, and so you weren't going to see him perform. He's probably the top safety in this entire draft. So two of the best safeties in this draft didn't perform at the Combine. So there you have that. But actually a strong group overall. Abram, Gardner-Johnson, Savage made a statement, Taylor Rapp, Deontay Thompson, Adderley. It's a strong group nonetheless. They separated themselves from the cornerbacks, I can tell you that much. They had the much better day. It's really unfortunate that they kind of shafted them at the end because they deserved the whole 2.5 hours that they made us suffer through with these corners. They should have dedicated that time to the safeties instead and put the cornerbacks at the back of the program so they could shortchange them. But that's the 2019 NFL Scouting Combine in a nutshell. Now let's get to your comments. All right. Try to make this as quick as possible. Ree says, what up, Lou? Sorry I missed yesterday in the house to hear your sage wisdom. What's going on, Ree? I got a question for you, Ree. Hopefully I'll get to it. But was Ronald Jones II that bad last year that I'm hearing people potentially saying that the Bucs need to draft another back this year? I know it's a new staff, so it's a fresh, clean slate for him. We'll see what happens, but I need you to speak to me about Ronald Jones. I'm just baffled. I wasn't a Ronald Jones fan last year. I knew the guy could run fast, but I wasn't a huge fan of his. But was he that bad that he isn't in the plans and you need to draft another back? Talk to me about that if you're still there. BE says, hey, since the Rams robbed you in the RG3 trade, give us your first, and this year you're not getting anything of note if you want us to take Rosen off your hands. Look, you need to trade him. I don't have to trade for him. I need a quarterback, but I'm perfectly fine with not getting a quarterback this year if it comes to that. I'm not going to allow anybody else to rape us, all right? It's bad enough that we're a bad football team. We don't have a ton of talent. I can't afford to give you a bunch of stuff. I'm just not in a position to do that right now. Reese says, Lou, what's the deal with all of these bizarre interview questions that teams ask players? Are they trying to catch them off guard to see how they react to discomfort? Exactly. You hit it right on the head. They want to see how these guys react to being uncomfortable. You've heard the expression, being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. That's essentially what they try to do at these combines. Make these guys uncomfortable, see how they react to being uncomfortable. One guy participated in a staring contest with the Seattle Seahawks. So, I mean, a lot of nonsense goes on in these rooms. NBA Report 27 says, how do you feel about us trying to get Josh Rosen? Or do you think it's fake? I think it's legit. You know, it just depends on the asking price. You know, what are they willing to accept for Rosen, and what are we willing to give up and part ways with? Reed says, been watching some of Greedy Williams. This guy seems like a zone corner to me. Not spending a top 10 pick on a zone corner. I don't disagree with that. Does a really good job of finding the ball down the field. But when you're talking short routes, quick routes where he has to respond, he doesn't do that very well. And some of that has to do with his size. He's 6'2". You know, some of these longer, rangier corners have a tough time getting in and out of transitions and breaks. And they don't bend well, and that doesn't bode well for them changing directions. Reese says, can't believe a team asked a guy if he had both of his balls. Again, these questions are goofball questions. They're off the wall, but they're looking for the response to these questions. If I'm one of these players, or if I'm a handler, an agent, I'm telling these guys, expect the unexpected. Don't lose your shit when you go in there. They're going to ask you some outlandish questions. Just be prepared for any and everything, and you'll be fine. So I think they have been schooled and coached up well enough to know that they're going to get asked some craziness. Captain Spartan says, so in no way Byron Murphy falls to 20 now. I'm pretty sure he's going to be on the board at 20. He didn't do anything today to change anybody's mind. Again, I didn't think he was a top 20 pick before the combine. I thought he was a late first rounder, because none of these corners to me were top 15 outside of maybe Greedy Williams. And I was on the fence about him. And now watching him at the combine, I'm not so sure he's a top 15 corner anymore. I think the first guy off the board may be Baker now, to be honest with you. And that, to me, you start talking about Baker at around 18 to 20. So, and honestly, I think it's right around that 20 range, because you look at the teams in that area. I think the Titans are 19, the Vikings are 18. I don't think either one of them are looking for corner help. So I think you just start talking about corner once you get into the 20s. Captain Spartan says, did the Steelers do a good job of shopping at the Notre Dame store with Tuitt? I told you, you're fine in the front seven on defense, and on offense, tight end and offensive line. You can't go wrong at the Notre Dame store there. Where you could get into some trouble is when you start looking at skill guys outside of tight end. You start looking at receiver. You start looking at running back or quarterback. You start looking at defensive back. You could run into some issues, man. We don't generally do those very well because it's Notre Dame. High academic standards, hard to get in. There's nothing to do in South Bend. Not a lot of people that are highly gifted athletes want to go to Notre Dame. So you get the tough guys. You may get the elite athlete every now and again, like a Jalen Smith. It's rare though. DMV fan says, who are the DBs with the most versatility this year? Chauncey Gardner-Webb is a guy with a lot of versatility, can do a number of different things, can drop over the slot, can play down in the box as a physical presence, but also play 30, 35 yards away from the line of scrimmage. And he showed the speed to be a single high safety if need be. So he's the guy with some versatility. There's some other players in this draft. Juan Thornhill has some versatility as well. He showed you the speed at 4.43. There are a number of different guys that have some versatility in this draft. Whoa. Hey, Ricky L just dropped a beautiful blessing on me. A $50 super chat. Big ups to my man Ricky L. He says, my man, my bro, you do so much of a great job. Wish I could do more, but gotta support the movement. Hashtag Lab Room Fam. Hey, bro, that's a huge contribution to the movement, and I really appreciate that. My man Sean Matt dropped a C note on me the other night and blessed me with a hundo. So a lot of you guys are out there supporting the movement. I can't begin to tell you how much that means for me and what I'm trying to do. So I thank you guys. When I get the $10 super chats, the $5, the $2, whatever, the dollar super chat, anything and everything helps. Whether it's new equipment or it allows me to do some other things creatively, any contributions help the Louie T Network. So I really appreciate that, Ricky L, man. That is a huge contribution, and I really appreciate that. But back to the rest of the comments. Gregory Lightbody says, Landon Collins to the Redskins, thoughts? I want to talk about that. I told you that we're going to have a Redskins report this week on free agency. That'll be part 2 of the 3-part series. And I'll talk about Landon Collins. Jonathan Cyprien may be released by the Titans. They want him back, but at a lower cost. That could be another option at safety for the Redskins. All of that will be on the Redskins report this week. So stay tuned for that later on in the week. Black Al B says, what it do, Lou? Who's your top O-lineman on the board? There are a number of offensive linemen that I really like. Let me go to my my offensive lineman outlook and my work that I've done on them thus far, and I will give you a couple of names. Obviously, I like Jonah Williams more than I like Greg Little, if you're looking to compare the two. If you're looking, and that's if you're looking for tackles, Jawan Taylor is another guy out of Florida that I think a lot of people like, even more so than potentially Jonah Williams. I myself am a Jonah Williams guy, more so than Jawan Taylor. But I don't think you can go wrong with either one. I think Greg Little is considerably behind those two. So if you're looking for a tackle, I think that Cody Ford, I know a lot of people like him out of Oklahoma. I think he's more of a guard. I think he's going to end up kicking inside, but we'll see. I'm always a staunch supporter of guys getting an opportunity. Same thing with Jonah Williams. A lot of people are telling him he's going to end up kicking inside the guard. He wants to play tackle. I'm all about guys getting an opportunity to play tackle first and prove to you that they can. Similar to Brandon Sheriff. He got drafted as a tackle. They immediately found out, probably better at guard, kicked him inside. The rest is history. I'm not opposed to giving a guy an opportunity, give you every opportunity to show he can't do it. Once he proves to you he can't, you kick him inside and see what you can get there. And that's why a lot of people have moved Jawan Taylor up the board because they think he's the legit tackle, whereas Jonah Williams may be more so a guard. I say give him a run at tackle first, see what he does. I know a lot of people were saying the same thing about Braden Smith last year. Oh, he's a better guard. They kicked him inside at Indy. They kicked him back outside to tackle, and he was a hell of a tackle for them. So I say you give a guy a chance to play tackle first, and if you're asking me, I like Jonah Williams and Jawan Taylor, and then to me there's a little bit of a drop-off. Then you get to Greg Little and some guys that if you don't get a first-round tackle, there's so much depth. Again, there aren't any elites, but there's a lot of depth There's some other guys that I like. Andre Dillard is the best pass blocking tackle in this draft. I talked about how much I liked him on the podcast at the Senior Bowl. I was really impressed with him. And you know they throw it a lot at Washington State. All right. So you get a lot of looks at him in pass protection. He's not a slouch in the run game. He's just not moving guys in the run game. But if you're looking for an outstanding pass protector with great feet, and he showed it at the Combine, ran a sub 540, showed off his quick feet. I think that's another guy that you have to throw into that conversation if you're looking for a pass protector is Andre Dillard as well. So that's my offensive line talk for today. Gregory Lightbody says, how did DeAndre Baker and Jonathan Abram do? I talked about those guys already. Baker, not so great. Abram was outstanding. Reese says, could Nick Bosa be there at 5? Absolutely not happening whatsoever. I can guarantee you this. If he doesn't go 1 to Arizona or someone didn't trade up to take somebody else at 1, he's definitely going to 2 San Francisco. San Francisco's not trading out of 2 if Nick Bosa is sitting there. Now, they may trade out of 2 if he's not there, but if he's there, they're taking him at 2. There's no way he gets to 5. Gregory Lightbody says, possibly no Alabama players for the Skins in this draft. Let's hope that they don't reach on an Alabama player. Like, I could see them reaching for like a Deontay Thompson or something in the first round. Don't do anything stupid. I don't put anything past them these days with Alabama players especially. Skins fan all day says, what's up, man? Nick Bosa would fit well with our beloved Skins. Well, you can wrap that up right now. Reese says, this is the deepest draft we had in a while. I feel there's solid prospects at every position. Deshaun Drakeford says, where do you think Grady Williams going to go? 1 or 2 rounds or Saturday? He's not dropping out of the first round. Look, we can sit here and bash him for the lackluster performance at the Combine all we want. The guy still is a tall, long, rangy, athletic corner that can find the football, had 6 interceptions in 2017, 8 for his career. He's not going to fall out of the first round. Let me state that. I may have been disappointed with him today, but he's not going to fall out of the first round. Know that. He'll still be drafted by someone in the first round. Believe that. Gregory Lightbody says, do you see Greedy Williams falling in the draft? Depends on what you consider falling. Did you consider him a top 15 talent? If you did, maybe. Maybe he is going to fall a little bit, but he's not falling out of the first round. That's what I would consider falling. He'd have to fall out of the first round completely for me to consider him a faller, and I just don't see that happening. Reese says, you say one thing every year, believe half of what you see, and not a damn thing you hear. It gets truer and truer every year. You know the routine, you know the motto, you know the mantra. I tell you this every year, as you mentioned. Believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man, Louie T. Don't believe it. And so, even though we saw a poor performance at the Combine, believe half of what you just saw today. He's still getting drafted in the first round. And that's why a lot of people still don't believe the Cardinals are going to select Kyler Murray #1 overall. I'm on board. They got me. If they line, they got me, and I'm flying because I bought it hook, line, and sinker. The dots just connect too well for me. Everything lines up too well for them not to pull the trigger on Kyler Murray. Halim Tonic says, do you think the Redskins should trade for Josh Rosen? Look, the guy that I want them to select at quarterback won't be there at 15. And because that's the case, I think that you really don't have a choice but to go ahead and pull the trigger on this trade. Whatever you got to do, do it. Because you got to have a quarterback. We don't have a quarterback. But I say that tongue-in-cheek. You heard my man B.E. trying to rape us for a first and a third and all kinds of nonsense. You're not getting you're not getting king's ransom for Josh Rosen. You're going to get a nice little haul, though. It could be a second and a third. It could be just a first. You could get a pretty good haul for him, but you're not going to get multiple picks, including a first rounder. If you get a first rounder, it's just going to be a first rounder. If you get now it's a second round pick, then there may be another pick or another player attached to that. But yes, I can see the Redskins trading for Josh Rosen, to answer your question. Gregory Lightbody says, I don't see Greedy doing well against any elite receiver in the NFL from this combine. Gregory Lightbody says, why are people calling Rosen a bust? Because people love to throw around the B word. That's why. Michael Colson says, are there any of these guys you'd like for the Skins, especially if we were to let Norman go? There are some interesting guys in this draft. Again, I'm not opposed to Greedy Williams being a Washington Redskin. If the Redskins took him at 15, I wouldn't be upset about that. Now, again, it's how you utilize these guys. I don't think he is a legit man-to-man, lock a guy down type of corner. But then again, you see him in some situations where he does a really good job. It's when he's off and guys run in-breaking routes like with Norman. That's a big thing for Josh Norman. He's not fast enough to carry those routes like a shallow cross. Or how many times have we seen him get beat on those across the field? That's why in Carolina, he was strictly a cover 3 corner. They didn't put him in positions to be exposed, and that's why they got the most out of Norman. We let him come to D.C. and convince us he could play man-to-man, and he isn't that guy. Greedy Williams can run, so he may be able to be a little bit more effective in man-to-man situations. But I wouldn't be that opposed to Greedy Williams. I wouldn't be opposed to Baker. I wouldn't be opposed to any of these top corners. I'm good on Byron Murphy. I don't need a smaller corner. Baker is a little small for me as well, but I don't have a problem with a Greedy Williams at 6'2", you know, and his length and his ball skills. Baker has some really good ball skills as well. So, again, I don't have a problem with the Redskins. What I don't want the Redskins, I've already made my stance pretty clear. I don't want the Redskins taking Daniel Jones. I don't want the Redskins taking a safety. If the Redskins took a wide receiver, it better be somebody elite. Don't go reaching for a receiver at 15. And just about everything else that's on the board at that point, I think you can't go wrong with a pass rusher. You can't go wrong with a corner. You can't go wrong with, at that point, if, say, a Lock were to slip, he's not. I mean, Lock's not getting out of the top 10. I'm convinced more now than ever. Thought his combine was really solid. You're not going to get Drew Lock if you're the Redskins, and that's the guy that I really, really want, to be honest. More so than Josh Rosen. I want Drew Lock. He's not going to be there at 15. Anyway, just Andre says, how do you feel about Juan Thornhill? I love Juan Thornhill. I told you he went to UVA. That's in our backyard. I live in VA, born and raised in VA, and so I always root for guys that's even if they're not from around this area, but they go to UVA, they go to Tech. I always root for those guys, and he's another one of those guys. I've watched him blossom in his career and grow as a football player, and I think he's a really good player. He's instinctual. He's physical, comes downhill, will hit you. He showed the speed and the athleticism, showed the ability to get up and use those hops. So there's a lot of things that Juan Thornhill brings to the table. The wholesome one Holloway, the U family, what's good with you, man? It's been a while. Says, where's the love for my Miami Hurricanes? Michael Jackson, Sheldrick Redwine, and Jaquan Johnson. I talked about Sheldrick Redwine. I talked about me being disappointed with Jaquan Johnson after having a strong Senior Bowl. And Michael Jackson, he didn't do anything for me. That's why I didn't even write him down, even though he's one of the better corners in this draft. In terms of production and him projecting to the league, I wasn't impressed with him. But he's a guy that definitely is going to be drafted, probably in the mid rounds, probably somewhere in that 3rd, 4th round range. It wouldn't shock me if he went off the board in the 2nd, but I think there's going to be a run on corners in the 2nd round, and he may be one of those guys that get selected. But he didn't impress me at the combine. But then again, none of these guys really did. So I probably still should have mentioned him. Andrew Decal says, man, my boy Taylor Rapp was very, very solid in his drills. Was hoping to see him running a 40, but he's smooth on tape, tackles well, and has a nose for the ball. Agree with everything you said. Was really anxious to see him run. He didn't, but everything you've said is pretty much spot on about Taylor Rapp. Gregory Lightbody says, do you think Jay and our OC can develop Rosen? Yeah, why not? He's got all the tools necessary. I don't see why not. The question is, will Jay be around to see this thing through? That's the real question. FBG Tony says, damn, the corners were that bad? Ouch. Sheesh. Glad the safeties did well. Looks like a deep class of them. Hope the Skins draft one in the middle of the draft. I agree. I'm hoping that there's one around for them in that late third when we have that compensatory pick. We don't have a fourth rounder. That's going to hurt because that would have been the perfect time to take a safety in this draft. Again, I don't want the Redskins reaching for one in the first round. I don't think there's a first round safety to be had for the Redskins at 15. Not saying that Nasir Adderley isn't worthy of a top 15 pick, and not saying that Jonathan Abram isn't worth a top 15 pick, because I think those guys are worthy of consideration. But I don't want the Redskins to take either one of those guys, even though Nasir Adderley is a guy that I actually really like out of Delaware. I think he's highly talented and skilled as a free safety, and I'd love to see him in burgundy and gold, just not at 15. I think there are going to be other football players that are better than him available at 15. That's why I don't want the Redskins to take a safety. I don't think there is any safety. When I'm done with my big board and my top 50 players, I don't think there will be a single safety in the top 15. Hence, I don't want the Redskins reaching for a player at 15. So, Gregory Lightbody says, our QB coach sucks, so Rosen will suck. I don't buy that. Yeah, I don't buy that our QB coach sucks. They just promoted our quarterback's coach to offensive coordinator. So they think highly of him, and we'll see what happens as we move forward. Michael Thompson says, is it true that Metcalf has the same agility as Tom Brady? Captain Spartan says, can one year you run the 40? I want to know your time. Man, I haven't run a 40 since high school, bruh. Now, I can tell you what my time was. I ran a 4.56, but I haven't run a 40 in years. I'd imagine that 4.56 has gone to hell in a handbasket by now, because I was in great shape in those days. I'm not in great shape anymore, so I'd pretty much say that 4.56, I'm sticking with that. I'm not deviating off of that. I'm not running it again because I'm pretty sure my time is trash these days. McLovin says, what time do you think Nasir Adderley would have posted in the 40? He flies on film and definitely could be a sub 4.5 guy. I was expecting a 4.48 out of him. That's what I'll put down in my notes for him, was 4.48 when I watched him. After the Senior Bowl, he was one of the guys that I wrote down, and I talked about it in my podcast. I wrote down about 5 guys that stuck out for me at the Senior Bowl, so I went back and watched them. Andy Isabella was another guy that I had no clue who he was. I checked him out at the Senior Bowl. He blew me away. Another guy from that group was Keelan Doss out of UC Davis, blew me away, so I had to go watch film. And one of those guys in that group was, in fact, Nasir Adderley, and I went and watched him. Like you said, he flies around. I put down he looks like he's 4.48, somewhere in that 4.48 to 4.51 range. I'd be shocked if he was anything less than that. So, yeah, I could see a sub 4.5 out of him for sure. McLovin says, with Landon Collins walking to free agency, do you think my Packers should target him or continue to develop Josh Jones at safety? It just depends on how you feel about it, you know. If you feel like Josh Jones is worth continuing to try to see if there's something there, then you move forward and proceed with that. We know Green Bay has never really been an active player in free agency, but I've heard rumors that this year they want to be a little bit more aggressive in free agency. I never believe the Packers because generally they build their team through the draft and they don't spend a lot of resources in free agency. So we'll see what happens. But Reese says, someone was in his face every time he touched the ball, Lou. Cutter tried to make him something he wasn't. He constantly ran him up the middle and split him out wide. Okay, so maybe a fresh start for him with a new coaching staff will be what Ronald Jones II needs. Gregory Lightbody says, why are the Ravens releasing Mosley, and do you see Dallas signing DeMarcus long term? They're not releasing Mosley. They're just not slapping him with the franchise tag. They're allowing him to test the market and see what he gets out there. Maybe they'll allow him to go out there, see what's available, and tell him, look, whatever you get out there, if you want to play for the Ravens, whatever deal you get out there, just come back to us and see if we will match. Maybe they talked to him already about that. I mean, they could have slapped the transition tag on him, which would have achieved the same thing. But they just want to give him a chance to see what's out there. Maybe they say, you know what, we can do better than Mosley. Or maybe they told him, similar to what the Patriots did with Dante Hightower, where they told him, hey, go out there, see what's available, then come back to us. And he did. So that could be the same case. And as far as Dallas is concerned with DeMarcus, I told you that they were going to have to slap him with the franchise tag again. I told you Clowney was going to get the franchise tag. He did. I told you Frank Clark on the podcast was going to get this franchise tag. He did. I told you DeMarcus was going to get the franchise tag, and he did. These pass rushers, I told you that market was going to dry up. That's why when Redskins fans talk about Preston Smith, I'm like, he's gone. Preston Smith is gone. The Patriots defensive lineman, edge rusher, he's going to be gone. His name escapes me right now, but he's going to be gone. And because that secondary market is going to be tapped into immediately, because all of these guys are going to get D Ford franchise tag. Told you that was going to happen. You don't let elite stuff as a pass rush. You don't let that walk. You just don't. So, I mean, it is what it is. Reese says, I haven't given up on him in terms of Ronald Jones. He says, I was ripping my hair out with the way Dirk Cutter was using him. You have to get him in space. He'd give him one touch and then he'd be pulled out. Falcons Fury asked about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I talked about him. He said he loves his tape, played both free and strong safety, and played the nickel. And, he can also locate. I already told you, he's one of the most versatile safeties in this draft, and he timed well, tested well today. So that was definitely something that I've seen with him. And you see that just watching the games, not even watching tape, just watching games, Florida games was definitely something that you saw apparent with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, that he's very versatile. Falcons Fury says, hey, what do you think about the Falcons tagging Grady Jarrett? I thought that was something that was in play for them. We talked about on the podcast the 10 players that Adam Schefter said could potentially get, the franchise tag. He was one of them. And I talked about the list, the top 100 list of free agents. He was number 3, I believe, on that list. So obviously, that kind of talent, you generally don't want to. And defensive tackles aren't getting broken off, So if you got to franchise him, you do it to try to work out a long-term deal if you believe in Grady Jarrett's talent. Again, that's how I go. It's certain positions where I'm like, it's not going to cost you that much to franchise the dude, so just do it if you really, really value his play, his standing in the locker room, and what he brings to the table. If you value him as a football player, why not just franchise tag him? So it is what it is. McLovin says, Sims and Lefko podcast on Bleacher Report needs a replacement for Sims. He just got the job full-time over at NBC. Who else could it be but Louie T to replace him? FBG Tony says, love the channel, bro. I would definitely start contributing to the movement. You always show me love, bro. It's the little things like shouting me out on my blog and reading my content. Thanks. Hey, no doubt, man. And you actually do some really good work too, man. Y'all definitely check my man Tony out, and his blog over there at ProTech does a hell of a job, man. And you do a quality job, man. Don't sell yourself short. Again, thanks Ricky L for the super chat, man, and the support for sure. FBG Tony says, what positions are the ones with the most depth in the draft? Defensive line, offensive line, tight end, safety. Those are the positions with the most depth in this draft, if you ask me. There's quite a bit of depth at running back, but there aren't any elite players really per se. Maybe Josh Jacobs is the one elite guy there, but there's some deep positions in this draft for sure. And I just ran through about 4 of them with you just now. Let's see. Ricky L says, should my Eagles try Ajayi for another year or try the Bell spree? You're going to have some teams out there that you're going to have to go up against, mainly the Jets. I think if I'm Indy, I don't want Le'Veon Bell, because if you get Le'Veon Bell, he's a do-it-all back. He cancels out the need for having 2 or 3 backs in your backfield. The Colts, I thought, did a phenomenal job of drafting last year, and so with you getting Nyheim Hines and drafting a guy that I loved out of Ole Miss in Wilkins, now you just need a complement to those guys. So I think the perfect back for them would be Tevin Coleman. I think he would fit like hand in glove in Indy instead of going after Bell. But the Jets, I think they're all in on Le'Veon Bell. They got a bunch of money to spend, and I don't think they're going to be afraid to spend it. I don't think you have the kind of bread that they got. And I don't think Le'Veon, as you can see, he was playing for a winning organization. I don't think he's giving out discounts. He's looking to get paid. Whoever's offering up the most bread is probably who's going to get his services. I don't know if you want that smoke with the Jets. Adrian Myrie says, who do you think is the most versatile defensive back, and where do you think he's going in this draft? The most versatile defensive back, I talked about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Adderley out of Delaware is another guy that is extremely versatile. When you talk versatile, you're talking about most likely a safety, because when you're talking about cornerbacks, versatility and corners generally don't go hand in hand, because you're usually not asking a corner to do multiple things unless you have a corner like a Chris Harris Jr. that can play both outside and inside. I think the most valuable position on the field in the secondary is nickel. It's so hard. You can find a boundary corner. You can find a guy to play outside where they have extra help as the out-of-bounds line. Playing in the slot takes a different type of specimen, a different type of athlete, and a different type of mentality. The receiver has a two-way go, as they say. I call it a three-way go, because you can go up the field, you can go left, you can go right. You can go inside, you can go outside, you can go up the field. You got to be able to have your head on a swivel. They're constantly trying to run rub routes and pick routes. Those guys are usually much quicker and shiftier than the guys on the outside. And some of these guys are extremely fast as well. I think if you're talking from a cornerback perspective, that's when you start talking about versatility. Can a guy play inside and outside? But if you're talking defensive back, when you start using the word versatility, that's when you start looking at safeties, because you can get a safety that can play single high free. You can get a guy that can also drop down in the box as an eighth defender or a blitzer per se. And then you can get a guy that can also drop over the slot. So you're talking about a guy that can do multiple things. And a guy like Chauncey Gardner, for me, is probably one of the more versatile safeties in this draft. Where do I think he's going to go? I'd have to assess what teams' needs are in this draft before I could say that. Again, it'll be interesting to see where a lot of these guys, what you have to take into consideration is how these players are going to get pushed up, how these quarterbacks are going to get pushed up, how a guy like DK Metcalf, how a guy like Montez Sweat, with the way they performed at the Combine, how these guys are going to get pushed up. Were they top 10 picks before the Combine? Maybe, maybe not. They're definitely top 10 picks now. You're not getting Montez Sweat. And I think somebody said yesterday that DK, Sweat, and I think it was one more person he named, all going in the top 10. And I said, well, I don't know about Montez Sweat going in. Montez Sweat's going in the top 10. All right. It was funny. They played the simulcast of him and Jonathan Abram running the 40, because they both went to Mississippi State. And did you see the height difference on that? It was ridiculous. Abram at 5'11", 6 feet, and watching this 6'6", 260-pounder beat him in a race. Ridiculous, man. Utterly ridiculous. But in any event, I am going to get out of here. It's been a long week, and the week just started. And I got a lot of content to try to pump out, so I'm going to go ahead and get a head start on that. Can't thank you guys enough for the support through all 4 days of this combine coverage. And make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the Louie T Network. Make sure you check out the podcast. Please, please, please check out the podcast. I'm trying to have it blow this year and really take it to new heights. So check out the Louie T Network podcast. Make sure you subscribe if you can on your platform that you like to listen, so you get the updates when I finally upload the podcast. Make sure you comment and rate the podcast. That gets me a favorable rating on the podcast site, which then promotes it to other people who might not know about it. So please support the podcast, Louie T Network podcast, available on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Music Play, TuneIn, and of course the website louietnetwork.net. So this pretty much begins my draft coverage. Now you're going to start getting content on the regular. Turn on the notification if you haven't already done so, because again, these videos are going to be coming at random times. I might upload one at 3 in the morning. You may be up. You may be an insomniac. And you may be like, damn, I was looking for something to do. Thanks, Lou. Hey, that's what I'm here for. Turn on those notifications. They're going to be coming at you hot and heavy. So with that being said, I'm your man, Louie T. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage. It could be, 4 days of combine coverage, a number of different standouts, some deep position groups. You had the cornerback stink it up. All in all, it's going to make for one hell of a draft process. And I'm going to be with you guys every step of the way on the journey. I'll see you guys later. Thanks again for joining me. Like the video. Have a good one.